Hey guys, welcome back. Today I've got another cake tutorial for you, and this is a naked cake. It's called a naked cake because there's no frosting on the outside, just in between the layers. It's rustic, fun, I love them. I'm doing a lemon cake with fresh strawberries and fresh blackberries on top. Now I started off with 2 8-inch cakes and 1 6-inch cake. And basically the first thing you want to do is cut the dome off of your cakes. You want these to be nice and straight across the top. So just taking a serrated knife, hold it parallel to the table and just kind of gently work around the outsides, cutting around that perforation, and then cut straight through the middle. You want to do this for all of your cakes, and then I did opt to cut my top cake into half because I wanted it to be 2 layers. My bottom tier, I wanted it to be 3 layers, so I just shaved one of them off and then cut the other one in half. Just work slowly and steadily, don't cut yourself, and do save the tops of all of those cakes because they're going to be fantastic for making things like cake balls and things like that later. Okay, after you've got your cake all the way trimmed, it's time to start filling and stacking your cake. You want to take some frosting into a piping bag, and basically you're going to pipe a border around your layer. And then taking a dollop of frosting, plop it right in the middle, and just really smooth it out nice and level using a skinny spatula. You want it to be as straight and level as possible. Then when you're ready to stack your final tier on top, or your final layer on top, use the bottom of your cake. You want for the brown to be what shows all along the outside and not that like fresh baked non-colored part. Now for my top tier, I'm using a cake board to support it. I do want the cake board to be smaller than the tier itself, so I'm just going to trim the excess off. And then after you've got it completely trimmed and smaller than the cake, you want to just smooth a very thin layer of frosting on it. Pop it into the freezer, leave it in there for about a minute or 2 to set, and this keeps your cake from tasting like cardboard. Then take some frosting and just put another dollop of it with your piping bag on the top of your bottom tier, and then gently place that cardboard on, and then you're ready to start stacking your top tier. And you don't have to stop with just 2 tiers here. You could do this for a 3, 4, or 5 tier cake. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that you stay consistent, that every time you top off a tier, you're using the bottom of the cake. Just keep that nice and consistent, and it will be absolutely beautiful. The next step I'm going to show you is a little bit optional. So if you want to make sure that you have a thicker line of frosting in between your layers, what you can do is in between each layer, you want to put a bit of a thicker border around and then pop it in the freezer for a few minutes, and that'll kind of harden it up. But I didn't really want that. I wanted this to be a little bit more like whimsical, carefree. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my piping bag and I'm just gently lifting in between all of the layers and squirting some frosting in. And you do have to do this no matter what in between your 2 different tiers, just so that it stays consistent, you know, that you have a line of frosting between every like layer of cake, no matter the size of the tier. So just go in and kind of plug and gently squirt. Don't worry about getting on the outside because we are going to go through and just wipe, and you'll just kind of wipe it with your finger, wipe off the excess. And just make sure your fingers are clean. It's no big deal. And you'll find that it just keeps that bulging out frosting appearance from going away and gives it that smooth, rustic look. Okay, and our very next step is to just go clean up any of the frosting that's sort of been wiped onto the cake. And again, this is optional, it just depends on the look that you're going for. But if you want to clean it up a little bit, just take a hot, wet paper towel or towel. Just make sure that it's not something that's going to leave lint behind. And you're just going to kind of gently drag it along the cake, and the heat and the moisture just sort of melts the icing and then pulls it back off. And again, this is up to you. It's preference, how clean you want it. Okay, and now it's time for my very favorite part of decorating these cakes, which is putting the fruit on. You want to use a toothpick, put the toothpick directly into the fruit, and then put that into the cake. You can use really any kind of fruit. I chose to use strawberries and blackberries, but the sky is the limit. It's completely up to your imagination what you do here. The toothpicks give you the freedom to make sure that the fruit is going to stay on the cake where you put it. You don't have to worry about it falling over when somebody's cutting it or transporting it. It just keeps it exactly the way that you have made it. You can use the toothpicks to let the fruit stand up, to sit on their sides, to even hang over the edge of the cake. Gives you a lot of creative freedom. The other thing that is awesome about this is that you can use this to cover up any imperfections in your cake. It's so easy if you just find a spot that you don't really care for, just to plop a strawberry over it. And then you can also do your fruit into a pattern, like cascading around almost in a spiral around your cake. I opted for a little bit more of like an organic rustic feel, but again, it's totally up to you what your vision is for the cake. The only real thing is just to make sure that you don't get too heavy in one area and leave one area completely bare, and then just make sure that you're covering up those toothpicks, because that will take away from the magic of the cake if people can see the toothpicks really easily.
Jaws all drop at the candy shop when we walk in the store. It's a frightening display. Mothers hide their children's eyes and hurry towards the door. I don't even want to know the things that they will say, but they can't.
Okay, and then after you have your cake looking exactly the way you want it, you've got all your fruit in place, it's time to put powdered sugar on. I'm using a sifter just to give it a nice sort of sprinkled look. You can use a mesh sifter like this, or one of those like manual ones, like the mechanical ones where you squeeze them. And just hold it up nice and high and gently just kind of sprinkle that powdered sugar all over the cake. Keep in mind that because your fruit is a little bit damp, a lot of that powdered sugar is going to melt. So even if you feel like it looks a little bit too sugary, a lot of that is going to sort of dissolve before people even actually get to see the cake. So just have fun with this. Again, it's totally up to you, and this step is completely optional. I just think it gives it a little bit of something extra and fun and looks absolutely beautiful. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and if you decide to create one of these cakes, I would love to see a picture of it, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.